Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is a stumbling block of their iniquity. In the news, from the AP, U.S. inflation reached a new 40-year high in June of 9.1%. This has been reported as a huge miss based upon their estimated forecast. This is from the app called investing.com, and their forecast for the CPI today for the year on year was 8.8%. However, the actual percentage is 9.1%, which is a pretty big miss. Okay, now going back to the news. Washington AP. Surging prices for gas, food, and rent catapult U.S. inflation to a new 4-decade peak in June, further pressuring households and likely sealing the case for another large interest rate hike by the Federal Reserve. This is to say that the economy is going to experience a recession, which we're really already in a recession, but things are going to only continue to pick up and get worse, and eventually we will see a depression with higher borrowing costs to follow. Consumer prices soared 9.1% compared with a year earlier, the government said Wednesday, the biggest 12-month increase since 1981 and up from an 8.6% jump in May. On a monthly basis, prices rose 1.3% from May to June, another substantial increase after prices had jumped 1% from April to May. The ongoing price increases underscore the brutal impact that inflation has inflicted on many families, with the costs of necessities in particular rising much faster than average incomes. Lower income and Black and Hispanic Americans have been hit especially hard because a disproportionate share of their income goes towards such essentials as housing, transportation, and food. Some economists have held out hope that inflation might be reaching or nearing a short-term peak, and inflation will not peak. In fact, inflation will only continue to appreciate and then turn to hyperinflation. And again, what is inflation? By definition, inflation is the general increase in the cost of goods and services due to the expansion of money supply within an economy. When the purchasing power of a country's currency deteriorates, in other words, its value, thus causing the cost for everything else to appreciate, to increase. Okay. Gas prices, for example, have fallen from the eye-watering $5 a gallon, and that's being manipulated. Clearly, that's being manipulated. A gallon reached in mid-June to an average of 4.66%, because what they're doing is that they're gradually giving the people so-called hope. They're push-pulling, so to speak. Give them hope, make them think that everything's going to be okay. Speak unto them peace and safety. But then what's going to follow after? Sudden destruction, as it is written in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a womb with child, and they shall not escape. nationwide as of Tuesday. Still far higher than a year ago, but a drop that could help slow inflation, so-called, because inflation is not transitory. It's here to stay for July and possibly August. Before I read on, though, I want to give all praises, blessings, glories, and honors unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well as men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. But to you I say Shalom and Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying and informative. Now, again, before I read on, I would like to share a good tool with you brothers and few sisters that you can use to look up certain financial jargons that these devils use. Now, the app that I use is called Financial. It's a good app you can use to type in the different financial terms or jargons that they use, such as treasury bonds, stagflation, inflation. So, for example, here is some definitions of inflation. The rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising. Why? Due to the expansion of money supply. The reduction in the purchasing power of a currency. Inflation has historically occurred when a country prints too much of its currency in too short a period of time, just as they had been doing over the past 2 years, but now we're seeing the effects of that. Central banks attempt to control inflation by rising interest rates, which the Federal Reserve is attempting to do, all right, through what is known as QT, quantitative tightening. But that's going to in turn only continue to hurt the economy. And I'll look up the term QT for you brothers and few sisters so you can understand what that is. Central banks attempt to control inflation by raising interest rates when necessary, which decreases the amount of money in circulation. Why? Because that encourages deflation, because nobody is going to be spending their money in the economy. That is known as low money velocity, which is the flow of money within an economy. When there is low money velocity in an economy, or low to little flow of money or circulation of money going around within an economy, the economy enters a deflationary cycle, period. And that's what the Federal Reserve is attempting to do by increasing interest rates for consumers, so that could prevent them from spending their money, saving their money to combat inflation. But obviously that's not working, because inflation is out of control, and it will only continue to eventually transition over to hyperinflation. So, this place is stew, man. Inflation. Well, I didn't finish reading that part. Central banks attempt to control inflation by raising interest rates when necessary, which decreases the amount of money in circulation. Inflation is inevitable whenever wealth is created, but central banks attempt to keep it between 2% and 3%. That's what the Federal Reserve usually keeps inflation at, as a standard whenever possible. Okay, now again, this was just an example of the app. Now, what is QT? Because I mentioned it. What is QT? Well, I guess this app doesn't have it. So instead, we'll use Safari. because QE and QT are two different things. QT refers to the opposite policy that reduces the size of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. That's why you've been seeing the housing market and the economy in a downward spiral, because all of the things that the Federal Reserve had bought over the last 2 years through the expansion of the money supply, they're selling all those things now off of their balance sheet. Okay. And again, this is just for edification's sake for you brothers and few sisters. This is from UBS.com. Quantitative tightening is a contractionary monetary policy that is the reverse of QE. The government bonds and other assets that central banks have brought from the market through QE programs are held on their balance sheets, massively increasing their size. That's why the market ran up over the past 2 years. QT occurs when central banks start to reduce their balance sheets. In 2019, the U.S. Federal Reserve is allowing its bond holdings to mature rather than replacing them. This is known as passive tightening. The Bank of England and European Central Bank have stopped their asset purchases programs, but are not yet reducing their balance sheets. This means their balance sheets will shrink relative to GDP over time, which is known as organic tightening. That's something else. But you brothers and few sisters, you already got the point on QT. Now let's go back to the article. And again, that was just simply for edification's sake, all right? So you can download that app at your own leisure and use it as a tool to expand your knowledge on these different financial jargons that these devils use to trip people and throw them off, because a lot of people don't know what these terms are. So reading on. In addition, shipping costs and commodity prices have begun to fall. Pay increases have slowed, and surveys show that Americans' expectation for inflation over the long run has eased. Why? Because they're waxing fat and kicking, cause all that money that they still have. A trend that often points to more moderate price increases over time. Yet for now, the relentless spike in inflation has caused a steep drop in consumers' confidence in the economy, sent President Joe Biden's approval rating tumbling, and posed a major political threat to democracy in November congressional elections. 40% of adults said in a June AP NORC poll that they thought tackling inflation should be a top government priority this year, up from just 20% who said so in November. The point of the article has already been read, so I'll conclude reading it here. In other news, cost of living crisis to hit women hardest, reports say. A cost of living crisis sparked in part by higher fuel and food prices is expected to hit women the hardest, the World Economic Forum reported Wednesday, pointing to a widening gender gap in the global labor force. But I thought feminism was going to help the woman, you know. What happened? The Geneva-based think tank, an event organizer, best known for hosting an annual gathering of elites in the Swiss Alpha town of Davos, says a hope for recovery from a ballooning gender gap hasn't materialized as expected as the you-know-what crisis has eased. The forum estimates that it will now take 132 years, down from 136, for the world to reach gender parity. Now that's a futile division. That's a futile statement. Delusional thinking, man. Men and women are not equal. The Most High made man to be the head of woman. But, democracy, liberty, feminism got you bird brain, numbskull women messed up in the head. But don't worry, soon you're going to realize that you're nothing more than what the Most High made you to be. Servants unto men. Okay? More so specifically unto the Israelite man. But right now, the Israelite man is not in power, so we're looked down upon, especially the Lord's elect. I pray I'm of the Lord's elect, as well as you brothers and few sisters. You sisters that are in order, you good. Keep doing your best, as well as for us men that's of the hopeful elect, let us continue to also keep doing our best to please Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, giving diligence to make our calling and election sure. Right? But as for these women in the world and ninjas in the world, they're going to be destroyed, man. They're going to be destroyed, and they're going to suffer, all the calamities that are coming. So, reading on, it says, Germany, Europe's biggest economy, came in 10th place in the report of 146 countries. Further down the list were the world's biggest economies. The U.S. was at number 27, China at number 102, and Japan at number 116. It says, in the face of a weak recovery, government and business must make two sets of efforts: targeted policies to support women's return to the workforce and women's talent development in the industries of the future. She said, otherwise, we risk eroding the gains of the last decades permanently and losing out on the future economic returns of diversity. I'll conclude reading this article here, and I'll just leave it in the description box of the lesson. The point has been made. Get ready to see these women go through a whole lot of hell in the times to come. Men too, but more so women. All right, but as for you elect sisters out there, you have nothing to worry about. Just keep doing the best that you can according to what is written in the Lord's scriptures, and remain subject and obedient unto your husbands if you have husbands. But as far as for you ones that are single, the Lord is going to pair you with a man of the Lord, with an elect man. So, with that being said, let's read Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 19 again. It says, they shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. Right, so their money, which is losing its value, will not be able to deliver them from the wrath of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. That's to come. In fact, they're going to cast their silver and their gold in the streets. Why? Because it's going to be useless because of hyperinflation. It says, they shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is a stumbling block of their iniquity. Why? Because their gold and silver is not going to be able to save them, to deliver them from the wrath of the Lord. All right, so with that, Lord's willing, the lesson was edifying and informative to you brothers and few sisters out there that's of the elect. I pray it was edifying. And until the next, I say shalom. Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai Bashem Achakudash Brakatam.